The transmission didn't come through encrypted military lines or cloaked channels. It hijacked everything. From deep space colonies to backwater moon bars, from the Senate halls of Earth's unified accord to civilian tablets left idle on kitchen counters, the message bled across the stars like an infection. The screen went black for 3 seconds, then lit up in static, and then in horror. The feed was grimy, like it was pulled through grease and old blood. A crude lens captured the bridge of a slaver dreadnought, all jagged alloy and bone-welded architecture. A crooked throne sat in the center, where an alien figure lounged with grotesque arrogance. His name, etched in the nightmares of fringe planets, was Tharek of the Chainborn, a warlord of the Bloodsurge Syndicate. His skin was pale gray, stretched over muscle and bone like wet leather, his eyes like molten copper behind a mask of polished bone. Jagged horns curled from his brow. Chains draped across his shoulders like medals. He grinned into the camera, wide and full of filed teeth. And he spoke, perfectly, in Earth standard. This is what happens when you beg for peace. The camera panned. She was there, lies Juno, the human diplomat. Bound in magnetic cuffs and electrosuspension fields. Her tailored envoy uniform was in tatters, stained with blood. One eye swollen shut. Her lips split. She was upright only because of the manacles strung between a brace of support rods. She looked directly into the lens. Defiant. We took your little speaker. She tried words. Words are dust. Ash. Useless against flame. Tharek chuckled, and the sound was worse than nails on steel. You won't be negotiating for this one. No trade. No ransom. You will simply watch. And remember. He nodded. One of his guards, a thick-bodied insectoid with 6 arms and a hook blade, stepped forward. The camera feed cut to black right as it raised its weapon. And then text appeared on the universal frequency band. Transmission ended. Claim of Dominion, Bloodsurge Syndicate. Target sector, Sol. Response requested, none. A pause. Then silence. The war rooms on Earth lit up in seconds. Fleet marshals demanded satellite intel. Interceptor squadrons were scrambled from Martian stations. A diplomatic emergency triage board convened within an hour. The immediate response was standard protocol. Send a second diplomat. A more protected envoy. Perhaps with a shadow fleet for deterrence. But then came the override. From Earth's Office of Black Operations. A department that didn't officially exist. They sent one thing. A single name, wrapped in a classified file marked N1NJ4, origin redacted. No transmission. No return com, no announcement. Just a signature appearing on the outer perimeter of the dreadnought named Morfang, now in orbit over Karthus 9. The ship's outer hull was the size of a city, armored in plates forged from scavenged war wreckage. Most sensors would never have noticed the anomaly. He arrived with no burn trail. No drop ship. Just appeared, crouched low on the dorsal plating, one hand pressed to the icy steel, one foot locked into position by a magnetic sole. He wore a suit as black as orbital shadow, laced with nanosilk threads and refractive adaptive camouflage. There were no lights, no insignias. The only break in the uniform was a twin set of curved monomolecular blades strapped to his back and a shoulder patch that read, Earth Force, Black Rank. Codename, N1NJ4. He knelt, motionless. Listening. Inside the Morfang, a slaver maintenance drone was inspecting pressure lines when its feed flickered. 2 red eyes blinked in surprise, and then shorted out. From above, N1NJ4 slid into a narrow decompression shaft. He knew the ship's schematics, intimately. He had memorized every panel, every weld, every vulnerable fuse junction. How? Because he'd been inside 3 other Bloodsurge dreadnoughts in the last 6 months. And left none of them floating. He dropped 20 meters without a sound. The shaft ended in a maintenance corridor lit only by flickering red emergency lights and green mist from a burst coolant line. The deck plating was warped, footsteps echoing inconsistently, as if the ship itself was groaning under the weight of its sins. N1NJ4 moved like liquid shadow. His steps made no noise. His suit emitted no heat. If you stared directly at him, your eyes slid off. He approached the first access node and tapped a command into the wall-mounted interface. Nothing happened. Because he wasn't there anymore. He was already 10 meters down the hall, slicing a ventilation panel with a 2-finger swipe. The metal fell inward silently. Inside, 2 Slaver guards were patrolling. One dragged a young alien prisoner, a blue-skinned child from the Rim worlds, shackled and trembling. The other was humming. N1NJ4 waited. 1 beat. 2. Then he dropped in. He didn't land. He descended. Smooth as a spider on silk. One blade drew itself from its sheath on a neural command. The guard turned just in time to see his own reflection in a mirrored edge. THFFT. A clean horizontal cut. The top half of his head slid away. No scream. Just blood and twitching limbs. The second guard opened his mouth. Too slow. N1NJ4 stepped in, brought the pommel of his blade against the alien's jaw, and then reversed his grip to bury the point through the base of the throat, punching upward. The body convulsed. The child didn't scream. N1NJ4 turned. Looked at them. His helmet shifted, optical lenses contracting to focus. "You are not my mission." He disabled the child's shock collar with a swipe and sent them running toward the open shaft. Behind him, the bodies bled quietly. Back on the bridge, Darek was laughing. "You should see them grovel, brothers," he roared to his lieutenants, massive brutes wrapped in weaponized exo-armor. "Earth's precious diplomats. So soft. So fragile. We'll melt this one slower, just for—" The lights blinked. Only for a moment. Barely a flicker. But Darek paused. So did his lieutenants. Because they knew what that flicker meant. Someone else was on board. And the hull breach alarm hadn't triggered. Darek's copper eyes narrowed. "Seal the bridge. Lock all sectors. No one in. No one out." The command was obeyed instantly. But it was already too late. Somewhere deep in the Morfang, a secondary security feed buzzed to life. The image was blurred. Distorted. Just a shape, flickering between shadows and light. A humanoid figure. Crouched. Watching. And then, across every security monitor on the ship, the same image appeared. A masked face. Blank. Eyes glowing faint white behind a visor. A single word scrawled across the screen in flickering, glitched letters. "Hello?" The Morfang's guts groaned like a dying leviathan. Steam hissed through fractured pipes. Cracks split bulkheads like surgical scars. "You didn't build ships like this for comfort, you built them to remind every living thing inside that pain was part of the architecture." In Corridor Delta 4, a slaver patrol of 6 moved with the swagger of creatures too violent to be afraid. 3 were bipedal and brutish, Grawl-type slavers with tusks and hydraulic knuckles. Each carried a compact pulse carbine and wore segmented shoulder armor painted in flaked crimson. 1 dragged a prisoner behind him, a gangly Zorathan female, wrists bound, face bleeding from a fresh strike. She stumbled as they moved, collar blinking red. 2 more slavers were smaller, squat technots, good with drones and doors, bad with confrontation. They laughed nervously, poking fun at the prisoner in Broken Earth dialect. The 6th was different. He was a twink, at least, genetically. Engineered on a lab station somewhere near the Spindle Star, grown to be beautiful, lithe, fast, deadly. Platinum hair, bare-chested, with mirrored skin implants and glass-blade fingers. A vanity assassin. The kind they unleashed to deal with rival syndicates or rebellious concubines. His name was Slither. His hips swayed as he walked. His blade fingers flexed lazily, itching for blood. His last 5 kills had been for pleasure, not orders. "She's not worth the cargo weight," Slither purred, brushing a speck of blood from his lip. "We should just peel her open and leave the rest for the food vats." The lights flickered. For a moment, the corridor dipped into full black. When the lights returned, the prisoner was gone. So was the rearguard. "What the hell?" barked the lead Grawl, turning with his weapon raised. Too late. The darkness returned, but this time it moved. A shape slid across the ceiling, silent and slick. Something wrong. Too fast to track. Too flat to cast a full shadow. The second Grawl spun on instinct and fired. The muzzle flash illuminated a face. A blank black helmet. Smooth. Visor like the slit of a scalpel. 1 glowing eye. Then the flash was gone, and his throat opened in a precise diagonal line. Blood sprayed the walls in a crescent. The blast door behind them slammed shut. Slide's smile faltered. The air felt charged. Electric. Like a god had just drawn breath through the hallway. The remaining 4 backed into a defensive triangle, weapons out, pulses synced to fire as a unit. But there was no target. Then came the sounds. Not footsteps. Drips. Wet. Heavy. Like something bleeding across the ceiling. A severed hand fell in front of the technot. He screamed. And from the shadows above him, N1NJ4 dropped. The ninja landed hard on the technot's shoulders, knees crushing the creature's collarbone. 1 hand clamped down on its mouth. The other slid a dagger behind its ear. SHKKT. Slither reacted immediately, lunging with a pirouette and an upward slash of his fingers, slicing a bright arc through the air. The ninja vanished under it, sliding low along the floor in a blur of black and sparks. As he passed, he drew a monoblade across the ankles of the nearest Grawl, who dropped with a roar. His under. The shout died in a gargle as a throwing knife buried itself through the soft part of the creature's neck. 3 down. The 4th ran. Didn't even check behind him, just bolted for the auxiliary elevator. N1NJ4 didn't chase. He threw. A short black cylinder whistled past the fleeing slaver. It embedded itself in the floor behind him. A micropulse mine. When it detonated, it didn't explode outward. It imploded. The slaver's body folded inward in a scream of compressed bones and suctioned skin. Then silence. Slither backed into a corner, chest heaving, his body language somewhere between fear and arousal. "You're not one of ours," he whispered, dragging his finger through the blood at his feet. "Too clean. Too cold. Who are you?" N1NJ4 didn't answer. He stepped forward. One hand went to his back and drew his second blade, longer, thinner, laced with heat-reactive veins along the edge. It pulsed red as it extended. Slither twitched. He liked the look of that blade. Liked it a little too much. "You're one of Earth's little monsters, aren't you?" Slither grinned, licking blood from his lip. "I've heard of your kind. But you're not untouchable. I've killed prettier things than you." He leapt. His body folded into a ribbon of razor limbs and spinning torque, a blender of high-speed slashes. The air snapped around him. But N1NJ4 caught him mid-spin. Caught him by the throat. He slammed Slither against the bulkhead hard enough to dent the alloy. "You're fast," N1NJ4 said, voice modulated and low. But not precise. He rammed the blade upward into Slide's gut and twisted. The twink gasped, mouth opening in a soft, surprised shape. "Pretty," N1NJ4 added. "Still not worth saving." He jerked the blade sideways, splitting Slide's torso in a diagonal spray of red and chrome. 17 seconds. That's how long the entire encounter had lasted. N1NJ4 stepped over the bodies and reached into his belt. Pulled out a small, matte black marker. He approached a wall panel, cleared a space of blood, and dragged the marker in a tight curve. The device activated with a low hum. A symbol appeared, Earth Strike Sigil, a downturned dagger over a circle of stars. Below it, he wrote 3 words in Slava code. "Lies lives." He moved on. Elsewhere in the Morfang, command sectors began to stir. The outer corridors were being sealed off. Hatch access points flooded with bio-lockdown gas. Slaver squads were summoned from Creo Hold, dropping into the armory to prep for response. One of the senior officers, a creature named Merktran, was reviewing security feeds from Delta 4. The footage was minimal, most cameras were shorted out or displaying static. But there were still frames. One showed a figure crouched on the ceiling, upside down, mid-drop. Another showed 4 slavers, already dead. The last showed a single blade embedded in a wall, blood on the hilt. Merktran blinked slowly. Rewound. Paused again. Zoomed in. A word was stamped into the blade's guard. TW-7 Inferno Blade. Earth weapon. Human tech. And the slaver knew exactly what it meant. Onboard message threads began to circulate. / his inside. / hull breach unconfirmed. / his moving between walls. / 1 man. / 1 man is doing this. The remaining patrols were doubled. Tripled. Command sent a flamethrower unit into Corridor Delta 4 to purge the scene. When they arrived, they found the blood had been rearranged. A message carved into the floor. "This is just the start." The cleanup crew didn't make it back. Security drones found only slagged armor and melted bone. N1NJ4 was already deeper inside the ship, tracing the path toward the prison tower. He moved like a ghost through blind spots, vents, and abandoned side corridors. His suit adapted to every lighting condition. His pulse slowed to 3 beats per minute when stationary. In his HUD, a countdown ticked. Prison block access, 12 minutes to contact. He checked his blade reservoirs. 1 drained. 1 clean. Nanofiber grapples coiled and primed. His breathing never changed. He was already calculating which arteries to cut first in the next room. The tower wasn't a tower in the traditional sense. It was a holding spire, 30 decks high, suspended in the Morfang's aft dorsal sector like a spine built from bone and regret. Each level was a cell tier, connected by vertical lift rails, laced with shock fields, soundproofing foam, and surveillance nodes that blinked in red-white binary like mechanical nerves. They called it the Tower of Flesh because of what it held, not how it was built. Prisoners. Slaves. Broken war captives. People. And somewhere on Tier 19, cuffed to a vertical rack and still breathing despite it, was Lies Juno. She had stopped screaming 3 hours ago. Now she just breathed through her nose and kept her eyes closed, visualizing the last map she saw of the ship's layout. Not because she expected to escape, but because it gave her something to do between the slow burns of the collar. The door hissed open behind her. Heavy boots stepped in. The air grew hotter. She opened one eye. Darek. The warlord himself entered like a mountain of teeth and chains. His breath stank of ozone and rot. He dragged a long, hooked prod behind him, its edge glowing. "You're still alive," he rumbled. "That's inconvenient." Lai said nothing. She just glared. "You humans," Darek mused, circling her like a predator examining a cage. "So clever. So fragile. Always talking. Always hoping. I wonder if you'll keep that look when I send your head back to Earth in a preservation box. Still, she said nothing. Then his comlink buzzed. Sir. Bridge here. You need to see this. He growled and keyed the line. What is it? Security breach. Tier 9. 5 patrols down. No sign of the intruder. It's... Static cut the transmission. Then a new voice came through the line. Smooth. Human. Get out of the tower. Darek froze. Lies blinked. Her lips parted. The voice came again, colder now. You won't survive what comes next. The line died. Darek stared at the device like it had just insulted him personally. Then he turned to Lies and smiled. It seems Earth did send someone after all. He raised the prod. Lies didn't flinch. Better bring more than one. Tier 9, 17 minutes earlier. N1NJ4 didn't enter through the lift. He came up through the waste processor shaft, crawling with rat-sized cleaning drones and the stench of decomposing organic matter. His rebreather filtered it all. His mind barely registered the rot. His focus was ahead, on the blinking path of a stolen schematic. Every 20 seconds, a slaver squad swept through the sector with biometric sensors. Every 30 seconds, the sensors rebooted and left a 2-second blind spot. He moved in that window. 2 seconds of shadow. 2 seconds of silence. 2 seconds of precision. He passed 2 squads without them even realizing they were already dead. The third group got unlucky. They were waiting at the stair junction on Tier 12. For slavers with heavy armor and ion splitters. Thick creatures, all teeth and veins. N1NJ4 didn't give them a chance to scream. He dropped from the ceiling and snapped the leader's neck before the others could turn. The second got a blade in the eye. The third fired a burst, missed, and lost his arm from the elbow down as the ninja rolled in low and sliced him open from thigh to clavicle. The fourth ran. Bad decision. N1NJ4 hurled a carbon thread garrote into the air. It looped perfectly, caught the runner mid-neck, and yanked tight. The body dropped. The head didn't. Now he was on Tier 15, scaling the outer framework using magnetized fingers and microhooks, moving like a lizard across a nightmare. From this vantage point, he could see the internal structure. Vertical shafts lit by pale firelight. Holding pods on every level, many empty, some with bodies. Some with pieces. The tower didn't kill quickly. It peeled. It starved. It whispered madness into the ears of the innocent. But even this place, this hellforge of suffering and brutality, had rules. And one of those rules shattered the second N1NJ4 dropped onto Tier 19. The guards were ready. Darek had left behind 6 of his personal Warden-class enforcers. Biofused giants with armor stitched into their skin, wielding shock mauls and twin-tube flamers. One saw the figure hit the floor and snarled. He's here. The air went orange as the flamers lit. But they were aiming at a ghost. N1NJ4 sprinted into their formation like a bullet with a soul. The first enforcer raised a maul, N1NJ4 slid under it, vaulted up off a ribbed wall bracket, and drove a blade down through the spine. One down. The second swung horizontal. N1NJ4 caught the haft mid-arc, spun, used the creature's momentum, and launched it over the edge of the catwalk. Screams echoed for 5 seconds. 3 and 4 came as a pair. Twin mauls. Twin charges. N1NJ4 reversed into a backhand spring, kicked the first in the jaw mid-air, then landed with both feet on the second's head, snapping the neck down into the collarbone with a crunch. 4 down. The fifth got a punch in, full force, cracking N1NJ4's ribs. The ninja's body folded, but not from pain. From control. He used the impact to snap backward into a roll, drawing a ceramic spike from his belt, and launched it like a dart into the enforcer's eye. Fifth dropped. The sixth paused. Stared. Then turned to run. N1NJ4 let him. Some messages deliver themselves. Lies Juno was blinking fast. She'd heard the screams. The gurgles. The wet sounds of end life. And then, silence. Until a hand reached out and touched the lock on her magnetic brace. Click. It fell open. She slumped. But someone caught her. Not roughly. Not impatiently. Steady hands. She looked up. A helmet. No face. Just a reflection of her own broken features in the polished black surface. Lies Juno, came the voice. Extraction in progress. Who the hell are you? He didn't answer. He just handed her a water capsule and a shock patch. She pressed it to her neck. Then he turned and faced the elevator shaft. More coming. Darek was not a coward. But even warlords feel unease. Especially when every floor between them and their hostage goes silent. He watched the feed. Saw the blood. The bodies. He snarled. Send everything. Flamers. Gunners. Loose the gladiators. This tower doesn't fall to one ghost. But it was already falling. Because N1NJ4 was moving up. And he wasn't stopping. The Morfang's war room sat in the center of the command deck, encased in layered alloy shielding, reinforced with adaptive kinetic fields, and flanked by 24 slaver tacticians watching 100 data feeds at once. It was a room built for dominance. Now it pulsed with dread. Alarms shrieked in every direction. Firewalls failed, corridor cams shorted, and entire squads went dark in the space of seconds. 17 units lost. Minimal engagement data, said one technician, his voice faltering. Lost, barked General Tresh, a four-armed Morfang commander with bronze skin and tusks like scythe blades. Define lost. Dead, sir, the tech whispered. Tresh turned to Tharek, who stood brooding near the central holodisplay, arms crossed, armor glistening with blood that wasn't his. How many did Earth send? One, Tharek replied. Silence. It hit the room like a gunshot. Impossible, Tresh hissed. One cannot do this. Tharek didn't argue. He knew what was coming. Evacuate Tier 19. Flood the shaft with thermal gel. Burn out every level between the prisoner and the bridge. Melt them both if you have to. That's a Terran diplomat. Then Earth will learn loss. But the order came too late. Because N1NJ4 was already moving up the spine. Tier 20, burn zone. The thermal gel flooded down like molten wax, hissing against metal and polymer supports. Pipe screamed. Hull groaned. Warning lights flared across emergency ducts. And in the middle of it, N1NJ4 emerged. Fire dancing across his suit's surface, magnetic nanowire cloak absorbing heat and scattering it across 1,000 microchannels. He was untouchable. 3 slaver gladiators waited in the next junction. One wielded twin Soraxes, another had a railgun fused to his spine, and the third dragged a chain of energized plasma. They had 2 seconds to prepare. It wasn't enough. The ninja moved like a falling star, first targeting the chain wielder. He slid low, ducked under the arcing plasma, drove a knee upward into the slaver's gut hard enough to lift the brute off his feet, and rammed a spike blade up through his ribcage. The plasma chain dropped, still sizzling. The Soraxes came next. Twin arcs aimed to decapitate. N1NJ4 ducked one, caught the other on his forearm guard, twisted into a sideways spin, and buried a thermal charge between the gladiator's neck and shoulder. 1 second later, the charge detonated. Headless corpse. Smoking floor. The railgun slaver backed away. Too late. N1NJ4 sprinted, curved into a wall run, leapt from the paneling, and flipped overhead, driving a throwing knife through the brute's breathing mask and into the exposed skull beneath. Silence. All 3 dead. Fire behind him. Bridge ahead. He didn't slow. Command deck, 1 minute later. Tier 20 is gone. What? Tresh snapped. Gone how? Burned through. Structural collapse detected. He made it through the gel. Tharek's fist cracked the table. Stand and fight. He's one man. We've lost 62, another voice murmured. No one wanted to look at the live feed. But the silence was louder than the alarms. Lock the war room. Full seals. Activate counter-assault drones and prep the null G fields. He gets here, we fight in 0. That'll kill half our own. So will he. Hallway to the bridge. N1NJ4 ran through clouds of smoke and debris, mind calculating every angle, every step. Behind him, Lies Juno followed, bruised but moving, a sidearm in one hand and a stim shot in the other. Her voice buzzed in his ear via subdermal comms. We're 10 meters from the war room. They'll be ready. They think readiness matters, N1NJ4 said. A mechanical clack echoed ahead. The wall opened. Out stepped the null frames, 6 of them. Each stood nearly 8 feet tall, walking tanks armed with torsion scythes, beam repeaters, and suppressive graviton emitters. They weren't built to arrest. They were built to erase. N1NJ4 took in the configuration. Tighter spread. Kill zone angles. Heavy shield units flanking the Reapers. Then the hallway lights cut. Gravity flipped. 0G combat zone, initiated. Lies yelped as she tumbled, but N1NJ4 twisted like a dancer in space, kicking off a wall panel to launch into the first null frame. Mid-flight, he drew a cryo-saber and carved into its chest plate with such precision the core wiring spilled out like cold jelly. He kicked off the collapsing bot and used it as momentum to redirect toward the next. Another slash. Another death. The others opened fire. Laser pulses melted the hallway around him, but N1NJ4 was never where they aimed. He rebounded off floating corpses, spun through blaster trails, and used their confusion against them. He took 2 in the chest. His armor flared, absorbed. He drove a blade between the third's shoulder sockets and yanked. Snap. The 4th caught him with a hammer fist. He hit the ceiling, bounced off a railing, and used it, flipping to slam both boots into the 5th's face and then plant a grenade on its thigh. Boom. Scrap floated like confetti. Lies, now stabilized, launched her sidearm into the last unit's eye port. One shot. Clean. Outside the war room. They're gone, came a technician's whisper. Thurek heard the silence return, and it chilled his blood. He turned to the bulkhead. Waited. Nothing. Then, boom. The wall exploded inward. N1NJ4 stepped through the smoke like a prophecy fulfilled. Not limping. Not bleeding. Not even winded. Lies followed, weapon up, eyes cold. Tresh screamed and fired the first shot. N1NJ4 dodged, twisted mid-run, and threw his blade into the slaver's skull with pinpoint cruelty. One warlord down. Chaos erupted. Blasters fired. Officers ran. Screams echoed. N1NJ4 sprinted into the center of the chaos and unleashed hell. He took down 5 in 5 seconds. No wasted motion. A cut here. A shot there. A twist, a break, a shatter of spine. Dancers don't think about steps. They move. He moved like that. Thurek grabbed Lies by the throat. You think this ends with you? She jammed the stim shot into his neck. His eyes went wide. She grinned. No. But it starts with you. Then she headbutted him, rolled away, and let N1NJ4 finish it. One motion. Blade to throat. Blood sprayed across the control table. The Morfang flagship's war room fell silent. Minutes later, Lies sat slumped in a chair, breathing hard, blinking against the light. The bridge was scorched, wrecked, and silent except for the hum of emergency lighting. N1NJ4 stood at the viewport, watching the stars. You're not just one of our agents, she said softly. You're not normal. No. What are you? He turned. Lifted his helmet. The face beneath was young, too young. Smooth, sharp features, eyes like stormglass. A deadly twink dressed in the ruin of a battlefield. I'm not a what, he said. I'm a reminder. Of. He looked out at the void again. What happens when you take one of ours? Then he turned, leapt from the viewport edge, and vanished into the shadows below as Earth's reinforcements closed in. The slaver fleet had been watching from orbit. 6 ships. Morfang war frigates, armed with neutron torpedoes, kinetic lance turrets, and lead armor thick enough to shrug off most planetary defenses. Their flagship, the Grievous Maw, was gone. Their command deck? Silent. No signals. No orders. No leadership. And then the fire trails began. From the wreckage of the flagship, 2 escape pods launched, one broadcasting Terran clearance codes, the other blacked out. Inside the first pod, Lies Juno breathed calmly. Her body bruised, her nerves raw, but her mind sharp as razors. Inside the second pod? Nothing. At least, that's what the Morfang thought. Until the pod reversed course mid-drift. And ignited. Aboard the second frigate, Fang of Despair. The bridge crew laughed. Earth's spy ship disintegrated, one slaver chuckled, watching sensor readings vanish into flare static. Cowards flee. Cowards burn. Send word to the other ships. Prepare to initiate fusion cleansing of the human capital cities. Then the wall split. Not from outside. From within. An explosion tore through the hull plating behind the command chair, and a black figure launched from the flames, trailing fire and smoke like a demon reborn. N1NJ4 landed in the middle of the bridge, sword already in motion. Security breach, screamed a captain. He never finished the call. The blade took his head clean. 3 others lunged with disruptor rifles. N1NJ4 vanished in a blink, reappearing above them, twisting through air, sabers glinting as he dismembered 2 and impaled the third before he hit the ground. No one had time to react. He moved through them like death-given form. Limbs severed. Necks opened. Screams swallowed by the sound of metal on bone. He didn't speak. Didn't announce himself. Didn't need to. The last officer, a Morfang female, dropped her weapon and raised her hands. I surrender. N1NJ4 approached. Stared at her. Said nothing. She trembled. I can give you fleet codes. Docking clearance. Weapon arrays. He held up a small, blinking device. You already did. He dropped it. Walked away. The ship exploded 10 seconds later. Orbit, 2 minutes later. Lies watched from the escape pod as the Fang of Despair bloomed into silent fire. Her breath caught in her throat. You're still alive, aren't you? She whispered. Another pod streaked toward the next frigate. Still alive? She thought. No. Still hunting. Aboard the third ship, Renclaw Sovereign. This time they were ready. Sort of. Hundreds of slaver troops lined the corridors. Automated sentry systems whirred to life. Drones activated with Killzone Lock ONS. The hangars were sealed. Shields raised. Internal gravity fluctuated to disrupt any acrobatics. Didn't matter. Because N1NJ4 didn't use the hangar. He breached through the engine core. 7 engineers were flash vaporized in the initial explosion. Then came the shadows. He tore through coolant chambers, sliced through hull seals, and emerged into the central passageways cloaked in steam and dripping fluid. The first squad opened fire. He reflected their bolts back at them. The second squad tried explosives. He redirected the blast down a corridor, killing 2 other squads in the process. By the time he reached the war room, the captain was sobbing. "Please, just tell me what you are." N1NJ4's voice came soft, calm, like distant thunder. "The price of silence." Then he ended him. And blew the ship from within. A message to the fleet. One by one, the remaining 3 ships lit up with warning signs. Frigate 1 lost signal. Frigate 2, destroyed. Frigate 3, core breached. No survivors. The fleet admiral aboard the Covenant Dreadmore, an ancient ship the size of a city, saw the pattern. This wasn't war. It was judgment. "Retreat," he ordered. "Earth has no honor. They send assassins. They send nightmares." But it was too late. N1NJ4 had already boarded. Final ship, Covenant Dreadmore. This wasn't infiltration. This was a reaping. He cut down their elite. Their tacticians. Their engineers. He moved through the ship like a disease that couldn't be cured. The internal cameras showed only flashes of steel, streaks of red, bodies folding in on themselves. And then he reached the bridge. The admiral stood tall, 10 feet of muscle, armor forged in the heart of a dying star, armed with a hyperhammer that had cracked war moons. "You are no warrior," the admiral growled. "You're a phantom. No soul. No honor." N1NJ4 landed silently before him. "Then let's fight like animals." And they did. The admiral charged, bringing the hammer down like a meteor. N1NJ4 flipped over it, sliced low, and nicked the admiral's leg. Not deep. Just enough. The admiral snarled and spun, catching N1NJ4 across the side and sending him flying through a console. Alarms screamed. Sparks rained. The ninja stood. Blood dripping from his side. He smiled. And came again. The next 30 seconds were chaos incarnate. Steel clashed. Hammer smashed. Walls exploded. Gravity failed. Blood sprayed in sheets. Then, a final feint. N1NJ4 dropped low, slid under the hammer's arc, planted 2 charges beneath the admiral's feet, and vanished. The detonation ripped the bridge apart. The admiral dropped to one knee, legs shredded. N1NJ4 emerged from the smoke, limping now, his suit half destroyed. "Why?" the admiral wheezed. "Why not let us leave?" N1NJ4 crouched. Stared the monster in the eyes. "Because you came to our world. Took our people. And thought we'd beg." He shoved a blade into the admiral's heart. "Earth doesn't beg." He walked away as the ship self-destructed. 10 hours later, Earth orbit. Terran Command Center. The council gathered around the holofeed as the final transmission played. One voice. No image. Just this? Fleet neutralized. Hostage safe. Send cleanup. N1NJ4 out. The council sat in stunned silence. Lies, patched up and standing strong, folded her arms. "I told you not to underestimate him." "We never expected," one commander whispered. "That level of brutality. Precision. Power. You sent a shadow. And he killed 5,000. "We sent a warning," Lies said. "Earth isn't prey. Never was." They nodded. And deep across space, messages were already spreading. Whispers. Warnings. A name spoken in hushed tones. "Do not take Earth's people. Do not tempt their silence. Do not provoke the ninja." Final scene, unknown location. A black chamber. Minimal light. A single figure sat cross-legged, surrounded by weapons and silence. N1NJ4. He cleaned his blade. Listened to the stillness. His wounds were healing. His mission complete. But his work? Never done. From the far wall, a red dot blinked, a new alert. Another abduction. Another threat. Another hunt. He stood. Cloaked himself. And vanished into the dark. Earth didn't need armies. It had him. And where he walked, none left breathing.